I thought it would be really nice if we could kind of talk about sending our kiddos to school, because it's tough to send typically developing, non-neurodivergent children off to college, but children who you've kind of had to hold a little closer and care for in a different, deeper kind of way comes with like a whole different fear, doesn't it?
It's kind of ironic that you say that. My oldest, who is now 24, when he graduated, he was technically 17. He didn't turn 18 until the summer after he was a senior. And he was accepted early admission to an amazing college. And he decided to take a gap year. He just mentally did not feel, he has some diagnoses. He, with the maturity that he did have at that time, just did not feel that he was ready to take on school. So he took a gap year, or a year off. Some people, don't know exactly what the term is, but during that year he worked and he traveled. He went to California, he went to South America. And that following year when he started, I remember, even though he was a year older, I still cried when I dropped him off. I still got the phone calls of questions, which is funny. I was going to talk about later, but during school, during high school, during whatever, if he had a question about something, he would give mom a call, and I could call the school, or I could call the secretary, or I could call whoever, and pick up the pieces that he left behind. But once he was in college, those were his decisions. Those were his decisions to make. And that was a little bit of a bump that we had, because I don't think he quite knew that those were his solely to make. And he was, but mom, can I just tell them to talk to you? It's like, it doesn't work like that, And he was 4.5 hours away from where we live. So it's not like I could just go visit him on a weekend. It was, he was up in the mountains of PA, and it was like sometimes round trip 10, 12 hours just to bring him back home. But during his freshman year, I know I looked most forward to the breaks, the holiday breaks, the spring breaks, just to have him home for, a little bit of time. Those were like my most favorite times I looked forward throughout that year.
I think
Well, see,
too,
you had a kiddo start school last year, right?
yeah, and we had a different experience because we live by Waynesburg University where he was going to school, literally like a mile and a half up the road. So he was home. Um, and like all those logistics of him having to take care of everything and then me having to trust that he's taking care of everything. Um, and I mean, our kids are only developed as far as they're developed, and we try to prepare ourselves. We know that that time's coming, that they're either moving out of the home or they're going to college, that they're becoming these independent adults. And I don't think that there's really, even knowing it's coming and it's like the natural way of things and whatever people want to say about it, it is really difficult to let them go. And sometimes you don't know it or realize it until you're at the point that you're dropping them off and walking away. You know, um, I think like it's a lot. And I've heard like a lot of parents say, well, I thought I was prepared for this. And then they weren't. And then that time that goes in between waiting for them to call you, um, to let you know what's going on. And I tried very hard to not be like I'll say it like a chicken, like pecking him to death. Like, did you do this? Did you do that? We got this email and it says you need to do this. To try to step back and give him that space to sink or swim, figure it out. That's a really difficult thing to do. And when you go from being like hands on to trying to basically micromanage everything, he had some health problems and he needed a lot of in-depth care that all of a sudden, like I was expected to just step back. I'm like, oh, that was a hard thing to do. And it was good. It's healthy. It's a good thing. And it's how it's supposed to be. But the day in and day out of doing that is a little different, than saying the words.
I don't know what would be harder, So all of my children have left and gone a distance to school, close enough to get them in an emergency, but far enough, except for my youngest, but far enough away so I wasn't gonna like pop out, for like lunch or whatever. Um, but I don't know. Man, I think for me it would have been harder for them to be in the house because I know what I was like as a college student. And I remember telling a story to, it was the summer and we were hanging out at my ex-husband's when we were dating, and his parents had a summer house. And I don't know whether we were on lunch from lifeguarding or it was a day off or whatever. And I was telling the story about how, my friends and I were watching General Hospital and, waiting until, the cliffhanger happens at the very, very end of, and then we'd have to like run all the way across campus to get to class on time. And we left and he's like, don't tell my parents that. But I know what I was like as a college student, and I could picture me now as a parent, maybe my kiddos in their room watching TV or whatever, and I'm like, wait, don't you have class? Shouldn't you be leaving for class now? Oh my God, when are you gonna leave for? And I think it would be harder for me to let go
Yeah.
if they were still in the same house. So kudos to you, because that's like a whole different, or if they were like really close,
Yeah.
kudos to you for being able to do that, because man.
Well, it honestly, we had to set boundaries. I had to have boundaries for me, like from him to me, and then me to him. And I had to like really work hard on having them for myself and not overstepping. Like I work from home, so I'm up, I'm working. He's upstairs sleeping. I'm like, I know he has a 9 o'clock class. Like, and just like you said, like, I'm like, he's going to miss the class. And, I'm like getting all paranoid. And I'm like, I can't do this. It has to, and there's things I don't know. Maybe his class got canceled, you know, so I need to stay out of it. But a big thing was having that conversation of, this is a beautiful thing that we don't have to pay for a dorm, I mean, it's like $7,000 a year, you know.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. And that's if you stay in the dorm. If they're in an apartment or something like that, you could be looking at a lot more money than that with
Sure.
utilities and meals. And so one of the things that we did was having that conversation of, and he graduated at 17 as well and didn't turn 18 till the summer, to teach him that it was now his responsibility to start parenting himself, and that we were going to be cohabitating, and we needed to change that narrative of, I'm the parent, like I'm up here and you're down here. We have to find that sweet spot where we're being very respectful of one another. And I am someone that is like very used to when I go to sleep. I don't want woke up. If there's emergency, by all means, please call me. I will come help you. 4 kids, we get emergencies through the night. But while you're just having fun with your buddies and you come in, at 3 o'clock, I fully expect you to be like a mouse. Like, I do not want to hear you busting in the door and like, oh yeah, I'm bringing them home with you. So there's things that like we had to kind of draw the line and say, this is what I expect of you. What do you expect of me? And he really needed to expect that I would let him figure this out on his own. There was so much paperwork, so much logistics to all this stuff. And you do all this and help them because it's the first time. They didn't know how to do this stuff before. And then you got to like put your hands up and say, okay, let's see how it goes. And that's a hard place to get.
Yeah. Yeah. Teresa, anything you want to share? Any lessons that you learned? Because it's a different story when your kid is 4 hours away from you, and then you kind of, the first time they call and they're not feeling well, or, and you're like, okay, well,
It was. I would say that for us, there was a lot of having communication, where I still needed to know that, hey, like, you're not sleeping 3 days in a row. And, that you did actually get up and, go to class or whatnot, just to kind of help keep things somewhat in a schedule of which I was mom, because he relied on that, but slowly to ease those reins, of which he then was becoming more independent. And, by the end of his freshman year, I know that there was a huge difference versus that when he first started. And there's the second year he was there, we had a death in the family. So there was, I ran up and got him, and then he actually had break like a week later. So I was up there like twice in 2 weeks. And, it was a lot of driving. It was a lot of driving until he had his vehicle. His freshman year, he wasn't allowed to take it. So, there was that also of trying to make sure that our schedules fit, just because you were done with break and I can't be there the second that you're done with your last class, you know. So there was a lot of communication that had to be had. But luckily with my boy, we talk always. So there wasn't that like, okay, mom, I got it. I can figure it out on my own kind of thing. There's always that open line of communication between us, which I cherish deeply, because I know, not all parents get to experience that. And he would constantly fill me in. Even if he went out for like the weekend, we had this social that went on, and, and he would fill me in, or I went to the first football game, and, just those kinds of things that he didn't have to share with me. But I was so thankful, because I still felt like I was a part of what he was doing. Even though, like Melissa and both of you even said, they're adults, they're technically adults. And the school looks at them as adults, and the school looks at them as, now's your time, that these parents are cut out pretty much, and this is solely on you. But I'm thankful that he kept me in the line of, that communication and sharing his experience and what he was going through, because I'm, those are times that I still think, like the first this of college or the first that of college, I still got to experience those things, pictures of him and his friends he would send, and things like that. So, it seems like it's so long ago. Like, think about it.
Well, I went to freshman orientation for like parents. They had like the parents kind of day for my youngest, who actually went to school closest to me. And one of the things they told us in parent orientation was, a lovely small school in a small town here in like rural Pennsylvania. Sorry. And they said they had one town therapist, and that town therapist had never taken a college student in the entire time the person who ran like the counseling center had worked there, because they had already had a full caseload of people who lived in town. And so they said, I'm going to tell you now, if your child's on any kind of medication, needs therapy, anything like that, you need to figure it out with their therapist before they come to school. Great. Thanks a lot. So I think that it's hopefully a little nicer now with teletherapy, because, here we are during your child's most vulnerable transition, for them to not have a therapist that they could meet with to get medication. If they need, that eyes-on visit, to not have someone to talk with regularly, is really, really, really difficult. And I think that that's pretty typical. We hear historically that colleges do not have good mental health services, and even colleges with the best mental health services probably don't have enough of them. But definitely, if your child is going into their senior year, junior year, even sophomore year, teaching them how to manage those medication refills, helping them understand how often they need to check in with their therapist regularly, so that they are in the habit of at least having that need to meet with a therapist and schedule in advance on their radar, so that they understand, if they're seeing a therapist in person, that you don't cancel and think that you're going to get in next week.
Mhm.
Because if you cancel, maybe you need to, you need to get into that back into that, you get your next appointment in 6 weeks. And I do know that my youngest struggled in while they were in school, only because they told me this story kind of as an aside, where one day a classmate, probably an older classmate, came up to them and said, "Hey, why don't you do me a favor and tomorrow just take a shower and get dressed up to come to class to see how you feel." And so that just kind of tells me my kid was struggling.
Mhm.
And I don't even know I'll never know who that kid was who taught to my child, who just kind of did that mentoring in a way that, I couldn't have done that because my child wasn't sharing their struggles with me. They weren't connecting to a therapist just because there was just no way to do it at the time. And to just have someone who was so insightful to just kind of in like a friendly mentoring kind of upperclassman way, give them a little bit of a, hey, why don't you just try this? And that seemed to really help. Also, it's probably really nice for somebody to know that like somebody else kind of cares enough to kind
Or
of
maybe
notice you
they
and
felt
talk to
that
you.
way too. Maybe they were in
Exactly.
that point and they felt that exact same way as an
Exactly.
underclassman, or could see the
Yeah.
kind of red flags of maybe of him being sluggish or not wanting to attend. And that's the
Yeah.
amazing thing of these kids as they're in college, because a freshman and the underclassman and the upperclassman, even though it's a couple years, there's this level of understanding where they are at, where there's that anxiety or that, nervousness, or even like you said, having that like mental health of which they don't want to get out of bed. It's a struggle to go to class, and they can see, hey, I was there. I was, and to see them have come, in those couple years to overcome that, it's amazing to see them mentor the ones that are coming in to help them and be like, that little bit of inspiration to let them know, hey, been there, and it's that maturity, and that's an amazing thing.
And I'm sure that landed differently coming from a classmate than it would have from a
Yeah.
parent, from a professor, from a therapist.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I agree. And I think whenever we're talking about their mental health, like we're preparing for their rooms, their classes, like doing all this stuff, I think having that conversation that starts at a younger age, in those lower grades, and if this conversation hasn't happened yet, it really needs to happen. What are the signs of trouble? Do we have a crisis plan? Even having like code words like, oh, this is just a level 1, mom, I'm okay. Or, having where you don't have to spill everything. You can just be like, I'm at a level 3. Can you come? Whatever that looks like. But having that conversation beforehand, because they don't know how they're going to feel, even though this is what they want to do. They're choosing to do this. They're going. And all of a sudden, like for a lot of Pennsylvania's rural areas, a lot of kids have grown up going to school with the same kids from kindergarten to graduation, and they know every single person in the school. And now they're going somewhere, they might know 3 people out of hundreds, so just even that social aspect of making yourself show up to a class you've never been to before with professors you don't know and other students, and um, besides how you're actually feeling that day to make yourself go. So I think having that conversation, and even having like a binder for them, whatever that looks like, of these are the roles for the doctor. If you, like Christina was saying, knowing how to do those prescription refills and making appointments. Okay, here's the consequence if you cancel in less than 24 hours. This office may only allow you to do that 2 or 3 times and you're no longer a patient. So, like, having all those conversations, um, I don't know. I think it's so much for our kids. And now we have all this beautiful technology. So, they're on their phones, their iPads, all this different stuff. I think when I've learned about this new thing, the Psychiatric Advance Directive, that it's an app that can be put on their phones, and when they're in a good place before they go to school, and this can happen whenever it needs to happen, but whenever they're over 18, they can do this Psychiatric Advance Directive that has all of their wishes, has their parents' information, who to contact, who their doctor is, what medications they're on, what medications they should not take, because by the time maybe they're, going off to college, they may have been on several different things and found out, oh, this one's bad. I can never take that
Yeah.
again. So you even get to put those things in there. And maybe in a crisis, maybe you don't want your mom called. Maybe it's a sibling or a best friend or, you know, whoever that person is, you can put their information in there and that's who they'll contact. And, it's their right to have this the way it's set up. But I think even if you don't need it throughout the course of that first year or that first semester, I think knowing you have it and being responsible enough and giving your child that self-esteem, like they've been able to do something that's within their control before they're possibly out of control, I think that would be something that would help them and give them, another tool in their toolbox. Like, okay, I have that and it's done. And, if anything ever happens, I have this, having a crisis plan, things like that. But those are free. They're available through SAMHSA, and the website is smiadvisor.org and /MYMHCA, and it's My Mental Health Crisis Plan. And it can be on an iPhone, it can be on an Android, and you can share it with whoever you want. If that you don't want to share it with your mom, or parent or caregiver, whoever that person is you want to share it with, that's who you can give it to. But I think it's really interesting, to have that technology and have that control before something may happen.
That's interesting because I was watching a TikTok this week. Okay, I'm on TikTok. And for some reason now on my For You page, there's, somebody talking about college, and a mom was talking about make your child sign that you could get see their medical records, and make your child sign that the school could contact you, or, you could communicate with your child's school. And there were the TikTok was 4 things that you need to have your child do before they go off to college. And I was a little conflicted because I thought, wow, really kind of take their autonomy away from them. And she was not talking about children who were neurodivergent in any way, shape, or form, had any kind of disabilities, just all kids. And I thought, man, that's maybe not a relationship that you might want to have with your child. You can have a relationship with them where you talk to them about what might happen, what might be needed, but you're not going to call the school every week and be like, what are their grades? And, she was talking about how, you're not going to know if your child's not going to class and your child's failing and stuff. Well, guess what, honey? You're not going to know anyway.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
funny you say that, because I have an article up that I was actually going to talk about, which is a lot of parents don't know, the FERPA law of when a student goes to school, which is the Family Education Rights and Privacy. And it's funny because right here it says, in higher education, it becomes the student's right to control who sees their educational information, not the parent's right.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it goes on and it talks a little bit more. It's from, U.S. News World Report. And it's just talks about, mental illness. There's sometimes where children may be transitioning. Maybe they've had through their maybe high school years. I mean, that happened with my son. My son's gay. And during his high school years, he didn't come out until he was in college, although I knew, mom always does. But, there may be things that maybe they don't want their parents to know. There may be something doing academically that and technically they're of adult age, and if a child wants to let their parent know what's going on, then that's their right to let the parent know what's going on. Just like you said, it's not our place to be intrusive and force ourselves into that place.
Now, I mean, I don't think any of us would judge if a parent called us and said, I had my kids sign these things because I'm worried about them.
Right.
Like we understand that this comes from a place of care and concern and love, not a place of control, generally control and authoritarianism. I don't believe. But if a parent were to call us and talk about it, we would probably talk to them about how their child feels and how their child may feel about this, and talk to them about like responsible uses of having some of these documents signed, having some of this information shared. When would be appropriate to use. It's not right to jump in and check your kids' grades all the time. They're not in high school. And also professors don't get grades. Some professors don't get grades in until they never put anything in until the very last minute. So don't be like calling your child and ruining your relationship. We did a presentation at the Secondary Transition Conference last week, 2 weeks ago, 3 weeks ago. And we talked about preparing your child for recovery, lifelong recovery. And we talked about how once your child turns 14, that's your opportunity from 14 to 17 to kind of help your child to move over to the passenger seat, move your child up to the driver's seat, and kind of guide them. Think about it as having like an extra steering wheel on your side of the car. And then once your child turns 18, stepping back and letting them know that you're in the role of a consultant now, or a trusted advisor. So they can call you and they can tell you, and you could kind of, give them some guidance or some empathy if they need it. But it's important to do as much as you can to prepare your children, and it's never too late. So if anybody's listening to this and they're like, oh, we haven't talked about this, talk to them about it over fall break, talk to them over Thanksgiving break, to have those shoulder to shoulder conversations. Maybe when you're taking them to get, pick up some winter clothes, or you're out running errands for the holidays or whatever. Have those conversations with them. And we'll put all the resources. We'll put we'll share Teresa's article. We'll put Melissa's app in the show notes. But we do have our emotional safety plan. And as parents, this is a great opportunity for us to think about how we could reduce our stress and reduce our triggers as we see them happening, and creating a plan for ourselves, and have that on the fridge, and let your kiddo know that it's available for them. Or if they're in their high school years, guide them, let them know how to make one, and how to, adapt it as they find that things don't work, or they grow and change.
Absolutely. I always say you have to take care of yourself first before you can do what you need to for yourself, or if you're in a situation of taking care of others. You always have to make sure that you yourself are taken care of mentally, physically. We are not ourselves to pull from if we don't have anything to pull from. So it's always important that we take care of us, they take care of themselves, just a person in general.
Yeah.
I think too, whenever you have the opportunity to give them confidence, if you're sending them out there, you're going to have two different sides to this. But if you're sending them out there and you're making them feel like they still need you for every little thing, how much confidence are they having when they are out there by themselves? And choosing to go to college, a lot of times that debt is on the child. They're the ones that are going to suffer the consequences to everything that is going on there. So if they miss a class, if they don't do something, it's on them. It's not on the parent. And if it is, if you're helping pay, that kind of thing, I think you need to set boundaries with that. But I think we want to give them confidence to go out there and say, I trust you to make these decisions. I just want to give you the tools that you need to be out there. And I think it's a really good idea to schedule time to talk. Don't call every day. Say, you know what? How about Wednesdays? That's our day to check in. Pick a time. But then if you need me, you reach out. But I'm hoping like every Wednesday, so it's not in the middle of maybe having a fun weekend or, their work schedule or something, and maybe having a video chat where you can lay eyes on each other and maybe seeing them so you can be like, yeah, it kind of looks like they haven't washed their hair for 3 days. Maybe it's not as all sunshine and rainbows like they're trying to make me think.
Absolutely. I think first and foremost, communication is so key. It's key before they even go off to college, those conversations in the years prior. Not that we need to set up this whole, timeline of things that are being covered, but I think it's just important to have that openness of having conversations so that as our children grow and blossom, that they still know that, yeah, they still have parents. Yes, we're still here. Yes, if they have that, question that they just can't figure out or get answered, that mom or dad's always still there. And it's important that our children know, my son is still my son. He's an adult, same as you guys. Those are still our kiddos. And no matter what, we're here for, if they're, Melissa, your daughters were making cookies the other day. Just those simple questions that they need answered. I just think that it's very important for our kids to know that they have us here to be there for them, no matter what it is that life throws at them.
And I think that it's really important to understand that even children with the absolute best transition plan go hit bumps and snags in the roads. And so the transition plan that you spent, if you had an IEP in college, or the plans that maybe your child had, they're going to go to school for 4 years. They're going to, hold on a second, let me yell at this dog. He's learning no thank you and you're welcome when he barks to cut it out. Like those plans that they had, their dreams of, I'm going to go to college for 4 years and I'm going to get out and I'm going to get a job making $100,000. And we absolutely want that to work out for them. But sometimes life doesn't work out the way we plan. And it's important for us to set that relationship with our children so that they feel comfortable calling us and saying, yeah, I really tanked in my midterms, so that they don't feel judged or, I'm having a really tough time mentally, so that we don't swoop in and tell them how they're going to fix it, just kind of be there for them so that they're not afraid to talk to us, because we are our children's lifelong safety net. And we want to make sure that they know that we're there, but we're unobtrusive and, useful if needed, but we have faith in them.